So welcome and Merry Christmas. You didn't know, did you? You didn't know you were going to get a bunch of free stuff, compliments from Matt. And I'm Dutch. You know what? I didn't put that out there because there'd be 50 guys here. There'd be 20 more Hollanders in the room coming here for free stuff. I know, I'm a Hollander. Oh, free fishing gear. I'm in. But you can't walk. I'm still coming. Crawl in or something like that. But I tell you what, welcome. Thank you so much for being here today and just to hang out with Matt. Has this powerful and incredible story. Let's open with a quick word of prayer. Lord, just thank you for this day. What a beautiful Saturday morning you've given us. Thank you, Lord, for Matt and his willingness just to come over from Cedar Springs and to share his awesome and powerful testimony with us. Thank you for the men that are here today. Just bless all of us here. Keep us and our families safe. Keep us safe on the roads too as we head back home. Be with Craig Smith as he's in Chicago for a wedding this weekend. Let him enjoy that with his wife and give him safe travels on the way back home. So forgive us for our sins. We ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
I didn't get a chance to do this in May. Any veterans here? If you are, just raise your hand. Have a nice round of applause.
Yeah.
Yesterday, the History Channel had about 4 or 5 shows on, and I recorded them. And I was going to say, is there anybody here from World War II yet? And the only guy I could think of that would still be alive is my buddy Phil, who's filming this. Oh.
That's why you got a face for radio.
Amen, brother. Amen. If you want to get on the email address, stop and see me. We can hopefully get that done. I'm not great at technology, hence I have Phil and my youngest daughter, Ariel, when she's here. And then in August, we have the great-grandson of former President Roosevelt. Will be here in August. The Roosevelt compound, I guess, is right out here somewhere in White Lake, the end of White Lake, and hang a left. The great-grandson of President Roosevelt will be here and sharing his story, so don't forget about that. Most of you have probably already seen these again, or have seen these before. I've started another ministry now called Cal's Corner Ministries. Click on the logo, QR code. See, that's why I have Phil. Click on the QR code, and that'll take you to Grant Men's Ministries, White Lake Men's Ministries, the podcast. So it'll take you everywhere that you want to go. It might get you free fishing gear at some point. You never know. Yeah. Speaking of the podcast, you guys, his very own Dick Smith was on a podcast that's out now. He knocked it out of the park. That guy is awesome. I learned things about him. Dick, nice job. Yeah. And I even got him to cry a little bit. I'm starting to call myself Roy Firestone. If you remember the interviews back in the day with Roy Firestone, that was his claim to fame. He can make everybody cry. Yeah. So even Dick got a little bit emotional. We had a great chat. Wow, that was wonderful. I was 81 years old. Sign me up right now. Sign me up, man. I'll take it all day long. So thank you for that. But once again, Cal's Corner Ministries podcasts. There's like 20 some of them there. But make sure you watch Dick's first. It was just amazing. So yeah, I think that's it. That's enough of me. Our speaker today is Matt Goehler. I first heard Matt speak at a ministry, something like this. And the line was rather long. I couldn't get to him. I don't know if you remember that or not. I was like kind of waiting in line. I kind of ended up leaving. Yeah. But I went to another event where he was speaking, ended up able to talk to him, and then we had lunch, and I went, you got to come to Grant. Came to Grant, shared his testimony. I was like, wow. So then it's like, okay, now you got to come to White Lake, and his schedule is so busy. But I'm going to shut up and let Matt talk, but he's got an incredible, powerful testimony. So how about a nice round of applause for Matt?
Well, thank you very much, Cal. I appreciate it. And guys, I'm humbled to be here. I'm not a Marine and I won't be pounding on the tables. And honestly, I just want you guys to enjoy those baits. So take as many as you will. I'd rather not have to carry them back. And they're multi-species bait. We could talk about that later. So I'll jump into the story that has me here. Like he said, my name is Matt Goehler. I own Lake Effect Lure Company. I don't know if you came to see a superhero this morning or a perfect person, but if you did, you can probably leave now because I am a very broken individual. And by the grace of God, I've been given an opportunity to do what I do. And so this is my story. And so if you can relate, I am indeed a work in progress. I can still remember the feeling of the clothes brushing over my head, and I can remember the cold barrel of my shotgun leaning against my chest. I can remember what the pits of hell felt like, the despair, the agony, the emptiness. As a child growing up, I grew up in a family of Catholics. I was raised in a family who attended Sunday school. I did the religious education, or as we called it in Ohio, where I was born, CCD. But my relationship with faith was pretty disconnected. A lot of the relationships that I built in my childhood really reflected the relationships of my father, and they were relationships of convenience. And I spent a lot of time in my life here sorting through my relationship with my dad, and I've been angry for a lot of my life about the way that my relationship with my dad has transpired. But I can say that we're all really a product of how we're raised. There's a huge portion of who we are that is determined by how we're raised. And my father, if I look back, he was raised by a family that was very poor. My grandfather worked super, super hard in a factory, and he wanted nothing more than for my father to be able to go to college. And so his goal was to get all of his sons to college, and my father was the only one that didn't go to college. And although my father achieved a ton of financial success, we were an upper middle class family. He was the vice president of a large copper company, brass and copper company in Ohio. Although he achieved those things, he never really felt like he had made it. And the reason I can come to that conclusion is because so much of the priority that he had with everything in life was the priority of just making sure ends were met, and then continuing to provide well beyond that. So we had all of the new boats. We had the beautiful big house. But the one thing I didn't have was time with my father. I grew up on a lake, and for me, that was the thing that made it really easy to fall in love with fishing. But I never once, and still to this day, I've never once had the opportunity to cast a line with my dad. From an outsider's perspective, like I said, things were really put together. Parents married, still married today. I had grandparents on both sides, and again, financially, I grew up in a community of maybe you would call them rich kids in school. And so as much as people may find that as a place to hang their hat, it really developed this sense of fitting in only because of the accomplishments of my father. As long as things looked good, then I would fit in. But really what was being developed in the young man that I was a hollow feeling. As long as everything looked good on the outside, I could kind of distract myself from that. But internally, I really felt pretty worthless. Fishing for me was certainly an adventure and a thrill. It provided beauty and solitude as it does, but for me it was a place to feel adequate. I didn't ever feel like I was going to be able to live up to my father's expectations. And I looked at him and I wanted to model my life after what he was doing, but really he was leaving at 4 a.m. and he was coming back at 6:30, eating dinner that my mom had made for him, and maybe watching a little bit of news and then heading to bed. And so there were a lot of missing conversations. And one of the conversations, actually probably the only conversation that I can recall of substance and guidance in my young childhood that came from my father was, I was in 7th grade and I was walking across a deck. And you might think, well, how can you remember this so clearly? It was that different for me to have a conversation with him. But I was walking across the deck and he was making dinner, which makes me think it was like a Friday night. And he was grilling, and he said, "Hey, Matt," as I was walking out to go fishing, he said, "Have you thought about what you want to be when you grow up?" And I said, "Yeah, Dad, I want to be a professional fisherman." And I was a 7th grader, right? And there's some impracticality to that, probably to a certain degree, because I didn't, there's a path to that. And I also think there's not a ton of professional anglers out there. But instead of getting the opportunity to sit down and really understand what I meant by that and work through it together, I was given guidance, which is what he was given from his father. hey Matt, you need to go do something that's gonna be secure. Maybe be a doctor or be a teacher. And because that conversation was so unique, I ran towards that. And so I spent the rest of my high school years prepping to not only become a doctor, but to go to college to become a neurosurgeon, because that's, after all, the epitome of doctors, right? I wanted to be the best I could be for my dad. And so much of my childhood was shaped by the lack of presence of conversation and just my father in general in my life. As I got to the university setting, I had a real struggle with knowing who I was, which to some people is a great thing, because they say, well, go to college, you can reshape everything. Who cares what high school was like? You can become anybody you want. Well, for me, it was actually a really bad recipe, because I became a chameleon and I could impress just about anybody. I could fit in just about any scene, but for me, it was because I needed attention and I needed validation, because I didn't have a true feeling of self-worth. The faith that I grew up with was this faith of going to church and then heading home. I remember when we were in church, my father would take us and we would sit there and I could see his legs bouncing. He was ready to leave. We would go up, do the communion thing, and we were out of there. And as I was working through my college years, that's again how I created these relationships. I would just move and be the entertainment for somebody. And certainly I had things figured out, right? School was never difficult for me. And I think in some ways that was actually a really big problem. So then I got to partying a lot. And for me, I had to have the best looking girl by my side. It was all about measuring up to the people around me, trying to prove to somebody that I was something. And to be honest, if I really looked at that group of people that I was surrounded by, I think we're all looking at ourselves, trying to hope that everybody else was looking at us. And I don't think any of us saw each other. But we were so distracted, and specifically myself, so distracted by just trying to perform. Alcoholism became a big deal for me. I drank hard, and it was because that was when I could let loose and just run around and act like a fool, because people said, you are funny. You're a funny guy. I wish I had what you had. I would get all these statements that were reinforcing my behavior. And little did I know I was walking a pretty reckless lifestyle. My objectification of women continued to grow and change, and pornography brought its way into my life, and it became a huge problem for me. I was consumed by pornography, and I'll tell you a little bit later about how that can damage somebody. But like I said, this lack of self-worth really got me to a place of addiction to attention. I was studying biology, so moving towards my degree to go into medicine, and I remember my capstone course. And my capstone course was evolutionary biology. And I remember there was this little bit about God, but there's a whole lot about not God. And in those moments throughout that semester, I decided, really God is for people who are weak, people who can't make it through life. They just make up this entity so that they can kind of lean on it, and that'll be fine for them to make it through life as long as they can kind of pretend that someone's there watching over them. It's a really arrogant perspective. But you can see how I could come to that conclusion, because I had a good job. I was working at the hospital. I had a trajectory that people would say was pretty darn good. And from the outside, I had it all figured out. That was until I met a young lady and we got engaged. And we'd been dating for a couple of years. And of course, our engagement was fairy tale engagement, because why not, right? So at the base of a waterfall on October 4th in 2014, I proposed to a young lady with a 7-carat diamond ring that I couldn't afford and was going to be making payments on until I was 75. And but it had to be perfect. It had to look perfect, because I had the perfect life that was coming about, right? And less than 3 months later, there were a few things that happened in between, but less than 3 months later, I found her with a man in another vehicle. And it ripped everything away from me. It tore me apart, because there's something about life whether you know this or not, you're worshiping something. And it may be a God. It may be God. Maybe money. It may be all the things that come with money. It might be a person. But if you're worshiping anything besides God, you're going to be let down. And there will be a time where you will find that out. And I found out a really hard way, because when she left my life and I walked away from that relationship, I lost every bit of purpose that I had constructed around her. And over the next couple of weeks, I was really spiraling downhill. And after a period of 3 days of no sleep, I had decided my life is not worth living. I have nothing left. And some of it's the chaos of just not having slept, right? But also it doesn't really matter where you're at in that moment. I was done. And in my closet that night, I remember crying and calling out to a God that I had already dismissed, which is a little ironic, don't you think? And in that closet, I heard the words, "Not yet." Just as I was about to pull the trigger, not yet. And I still don't know. And I'll never know, maybe until I am there with him in heaven. I don't know if that was really audible or if it was just in my mind, but it was enough for me to fall asleep. I fell asleep in my closet that night. I woke up the next morning, and for some weird reason, I didn't really question the fact that I woke up on the floor of my closet. But I was getting ready for work, and I was walking out the door, and all of a sudden something hit me. And I stopped and I said, either I lost my mind last night in that closet, or I met God, the God of the universe, and he came to me. And I said, God, in that moment, I said, God, if that was you, show me, help me, and I will give everything that I have to you. I will give the rest of my life serving you. And a couple years ago, I was able to kind of look back on what happened over the next year after that and really reflect on not only what happened after I met God, but all of the places where he was in my life prior to that I had never fully seen before. And so I came to write just a journal entry called Threads, and I didn't really realize then, but it's such a key part of my testimony. So I'm going to read that to you real quick, and then I'll share with you some of the things that God has done in my life. There I sat, swallowed by defeat, completely consumed by nothingness. Half empty would have felt like ecstasy in those moments. I think back and remember his voice, like a father yelling to his son as he runs toward the road with cars zipping past, like a father that is desperate to have his son stop and return to safety. A protector, a preserver, a guardian. I wasn't a believer then. I wanted to hate the thought of a God who would passively stand by as humans died from disease, from betrayal, from recklessness of others, lives taken in the blink of an eye, innocent people carried off to a grave of dirt, only to be forgotten by all but those who were closely related. A God who didn't help and a God that didn't save, some lame bystander. And moments in my life I felt reinforced just how correct I was. I was 27 years old. I knew about life. After all, I had gone to college. I had been around long enough to know right and wrong, and that the only difference between accomplishment and failure was the personal decision to press on or give up. I didn't need any God to tell me how to get stuff done. I didn't need anyone to lean on. I was strong. In fact, when it came to life, I was bulletproof. Arrogance, haughtiness, egotism, far from the days of my childhood. I can recall Sunday mornings as an adolescent. I could hardly sit through a whole service in church. I would grab at whatever I could to distract me, impatiently wondering when communion would be finished. I knew that meant church was almost over. It was unbearable. Clocks never moved so slowly. I would sit next to Grandpa, wild and barely listening, but I'm sure he knew the investment that was being made. It only takes a thread, passing from generation to generation, imperfectly winding its way through broken families, broken believers, grandfathers of grandfathers, continuing to hand the threads to their children and their children's children, threads for the future. Beyond the distractions, behind the impatience, before I ever recognized him, there was a thread. invisible to me, yet I carried it with me from the moment they passed it along, through my innocent grade school years, through my confused and rebellious high school years, through my prideful college years, into my engagement. Then it happened, the worst thing I could have possibly imagined at the time, betrayal. My feelings of self-worth shattered in an instant, as though every day of my life up until that point had its value suddenly stolen. Colors faded into shades of black and gray. A heart that once felt full was now a hollowed, empty cavern of isolation. I sat alone on an island of hopelessness, stranded inside of myself. Cold and abandoned, sleepless and weary, I clawed my way through each minute, struggling to stand in the light of day, almost welcoming the dark. When the agony would relent for a moment due to sheer exhaustion, I'd fall asleep, so depressed that I found my eyes begging to stay closed forever, not able to face the reality of my pain when I awoke. And in a moment of insufferable grieving, feeling wounded beyond repair, I made the decision to end my life, to rid everyone of my pitiful and detestable self. I thought with confidence that I had nothing left, hanging by a thread. A thread that had traveled hundreds of thousands of miles with me throughout my life. A thread that wrapped itself around the things that I patterned towards, the things that I worshiped. A thread that visited places I told myself I'd never go. A thread that stayed with me and witnessed everything I had done. A thread that had finally found its end. Yet, in all my unbelief and anger, God heard my cries as I challenged him, even as I sat on the floor of my closet and screamed at the God who I had grown to claim was fictional, the God who I thought couldn't possibly be real, the God who allowed circumstances that had left me drowning inside, the God who sat by and watched as my grandfather died from cancer, my best friend gone. I was only 10. The God who watched the choices that my older brother made when he was hurting, didn't help him to turn his life around until our relationship had crumbled. Where were you then? The God who left me to feel alone when others weren't around, the God who had abandoned me. We've all got our list of moments. If God were as good as they said, if God were as strong as they said, if God were as loving as they said, then why, God? It's easy to see flaws when we're looking for flaws. It's easy to blame when we don't fully understand. I had finally found the end of my thread. My pain was too great to handle. My sadness was a sea too large to cross, and my anger was a bomb that was ready to explode. And as I thought my gun was the only escape from my suffering, he handed me a thread. A new thread that marked the beginning of my life in Christ. A thread that I would pass to my children, and that I pray someday they will pass to theirs, to their children and their children's children. A thread of hope, a thread of promise, a thread of understanding, of wisdom and of trust, a thread of mercy, one of forgiveness and of love, a thread of peace in the storms and of light in the darkness. And as I screamed, he pulled me in. And as I wept, he wept with me. I could hear him call to me as I ran toward that street, a father calling his son to safety. I could finally hear his voice for the first time in my life. It's been 10 years now, and he is still cleaning up a few of the remnants of my past. He's still fixing me, and I'm convinced I'll never arrive until I'm finally at home with him in heaven someday. But he's healed so much of my wounded and broken self. And with each day that passes, I see lost people just like I was before he gave me a new life. And every day God hands me a new thread to pass to others, a thread that can rewrite the future of family trees, a new thread that brings eternity with it and transforms hearts, bringing death to life, a thread we've all been called to pass along. And with this revelation, I'm continually reminded that it only takes a thread to save someone's life, and that thread is the one of Jesus Christ, the only thread that has no end. So what I thought was actually the end of my life was the beginning of my life. For I know the plans that I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. There was one day, and I'm a person that just challenges everything, and it's just part of who I am. And I challenged God for that first year especially. And there are moments where I still do. It's just human nature. But there was one thing I told God, you will never be able to fix. God, I see what you've done. I see what you've done, but you can't fix this one moment. And that was that moment where I was standing at the base of that waterfall. That moment will never be removed from my memory, God. That October 4th of 2014, where she broke my heart. Yeah, you'll bring something, but it's gonna be a second version of whatever it was. I'm already broken and tarnished, and little did I know I would be standing in front of my church being baptized on October 4th of 2015. That was not my plan. I didn't even know on that day that it was October 4th. He redeemed that day. And now it's not only a day that I get to celebrate, but it was also the start of a huge healing journey for me to be able to pray for and forgive the girl who had hurt me. You know, I think one of the things is that we experience people at face value. We see people where they're at now. And I think that's something we can do. It's really hard to get a chance to learn their journey and what may have gotten them to where they are. And this young lady had a very broken family. She had a lot of challenges and things that she was going through. And I can honestly look back and say, man, my prayers for her were, I hope that she finds Jesus. And I hope that she really begins to recognize the value that she has as a human, and that she's not trying to find it in all these other places, just like me. And I think we all have that opportunity to really, really hurt for a long time and hurt other people unintentionally most times. But I also believe that we also have not only the opportunity to be redeemed, but God has a story that He's crafting, and we have a chance to really change other people's lives with our story. I'm gonna show you my family this way here. I have a family now. I have a stunning wife, and I have 3 beautiful children, none of which I deserve. And God just keeps giving more and more. And I'm like, God, please take it from me, because I'm gonna wreck it. But as long as God is there and I'm clinging to Him, I know He's gonna keep us all safe, because He's loved them all just the same. And one of the most beautiful things that God has done for me in my life is He gave me the gift of a child. I thought I would never have a child well before I went through what I went through. And I don't know what that was, but I never thought I would have a child. And I remember we almost lost our son during childbirth. And in those moments, I was terrified and I was praying. And the moment he started breathing and I saw his face, I got this perfect picture of how God sees us. He was actually a really ugly baby, guys. I didn't know it in the moment, but I look back and like, I had his pictures and I'm like, ugh, that was a goofy looking dude. He was Frank Breach. He had like have you seen those, the really fast motorcycle racers? They have that weird helmet. His head was shaped like that. And I don't know how we didn't just instantly put him into a helmet. But like, I think we're all gifted with the opportunity to see our children as much more beautiful than they really are. But I think that some of that's preservation, because we would just, in our greed, probably leave them be. But it also gave me this opportunity to see like, things aren't as they seem always. And that's a gift that God gives us. He gives us this vision for something, and He can say, it's a lot prettier than what reality is. And I think what that can do is that can change the way we look at ourselves. Because I've made some pretty ugly choices. And I can guarantee that there are people in here who have made pretty ugly choices. And we can look at the people who have hurt us and say, they're kind of ugly. But God doesn't see us that way. And I think that's worth noting, because that helps us care for ourselves and care for others in a very different capacity. Fishing is different now. It's a place to be seen when I'm feeling alone. It's a place to just simply exist among God's creation. And we are in such a fast-paced world, guys. And we're always distracted by the phones. And I fall victim to this all the time. So much of my business is on my phone, and I can't stand it. I've tried to get rid of it. I've tried to remove it. I have 3 cell phones now. It doesn't make any sense. I've tried to subdivide it and say like, oh, I'm only gonna have this at this time of the day. Like, because I'm trying to be present. And there's so many different distractions, and fishing gives me an opportunity to be present. It's a great place for me to escape with my family, but it's also a great place for me to just be with God. It's a place for me to be myself with nobody to impress. It's a place, ultimately though, that's untamed, unruly, and unpredictable, and that draw is very exciting. It's fun not knowing what's next. And for me, fishing just feels like home. I don't know if you know this, but Jesus was in the business of being a businessman. He was, but his business was in the transformation of hearts. And we have this weird thing. Christianity is weird. I mean, we believe in a God that came to earth as a human, experienced all the things human, died, and then as he was resurrected, he left behind a spirit that we can accept that lives within us and kind of guides us and helps us to become a different person. And that's weird. That's very weird. But it's also amazing because we can be called to do things that we could never make decisions to be able to do ourselves. We could make a decision, but we can never accomplish on our own. And a few of those things for me were my sickness. I never thought I would get over pornography. It was never even a thought for me. But as I met my now wife, he healed me of that instantly. I was praying a prayer one morning. I was like, God, I don't want to wreck this future relationship. I don't want to wreck what might be a marriage in the future. God, take this from me. And he instantly gave me the revelation, hey, those girls that you're watching, those are my daughters. And I think in that moment too, he kind of gave me a picture of my future. You might have a daughter someday. What would that feel like? And that changed my heart. It wasn't a decision I made. He did that for me. Now I have to adhere to a discipline, but boy, it's nice when he can do that work in us and we allow him to do that work. My alcoholism disappeared. I have too much going on. I have too much value for life to wake up and just feel like trash and party hard, but I'm also not looking to escape. And I'm not shaming anybody who is struggling with alcohol or pornography. Believe me, I couldn't have fixed any of those things. But I am saying if you are struggling with something like that, God can help you through that. I promise you. If you will pray to him, he can change that. And I'm not saying he'll change it right away. The drinking thing took me about 2 years into my marriage, a couple of little arguments. And I woke up and I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. My dishonesty and my exaggeration. I was constantly exaggerating, trying to make myself look cool. I mean, it's just what you do because really life is pretty standard for most of us. But now I get the rest in knowing that I'm doing the next right thing and just being a person. I don't have to perform. And there is so much peace in that. That's God's work in me, not me. So that's me bragging on him. His grace and his mercy, the fact that it comes to us never ending, just every day. I have to lean into that every single day. And I've come to realize I'm a performative person. I love metrics. I love being able to say, okay, this is where we were, this is where we are. It's just part of who I am. But it can be dangerous in faith because if you don't see progress, your version of progress, it's really easy to start thinking that God's given up on you and that maybe you're not worthwhile and that maybe God's not perfect. And that's a dangerous, dangerous game. But with time, I've come to find this in my maturation of my faith journey. Redemption does not produce perfection. Rather, it rescues, it rearranges, it provides refuge, it protecting, bringing peace, and ultimately leading to perseverance, despite our imperfections, continually calling us to something greater. And so in trust, we look heavenward to the pioneer and perfecter of faith, Jesus Christ. All right, how am I doing on time? Because I don't want to. Okay.
You're good. Another 10 minutes.
Cool. So I don't know if you've seen lately. You've probably heard hurting people hurt people, but you've probably also seen the headlines. And we just really love to stab at everybody else. And I'm convinced that one of the greatest addictions of our day is actually not so much the phones. It's actually the addiction to news for the sake of attacking others, being fully informed so that we can one-up the person that we're with. And I think we do this in relationships that matter to us. because we almost always have to feel like we have an edge so that we don't get hurt. Some of it's this protective mentality. And we're guys, so we want to be the best. There's some of that too. Some of it's social, and I do believe we're born into competition. I think there's a good competition as well, but I think it can get out of control. And so we live in this contradictive society that says, oh, do as I say, not as I do. What does that even mean? Really, you're admitting to the fact that you don't have integrity, but we say it. I think I've probably said it before. We're creative, but we're confused. I'm gonna build my own truth. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but like that's that freedom from any type of faith mentality. I'll build my own truth. That doesn't make any sense. Truth is truth. We can't change truth. It is what it is. But we don't really need to make sense much. It sounds right. There's these little taglines to grab onto, and people construct their whole lives around this stuff. It's dangerous. Truth is there. Our world is dying to know truth. Our world is dying to know Jesus. But the great thing too is that you've been called to be a vessel, like a laser pointer at Jesus, to teach people about how he can transform lives. That's why I've said we have a story. And if Jesus has changed your life, do not be afraid. Tell it, because you could save someone's life. I've spoken now probably, I don't know, maybe 30 times. I'm not sure the exact number of places that I've shared my testimony. And I've had a number of people, almost every single time I've spoken, I've had a person, and maybe not in the moment, but afterwards reach out to me and say, I thought about ending my life this week. I had a person who said, I was thinking about ending my life this morning before I heard you speak. If you're lacking purpose, I will be an ear for you. I can't fix you, but I promise you that if you will cling to Jesus, even if you're a person who doesn't know Christ, just say it. Just start to try to believe, because I promise you on the other side of the pain that you're going through is a world you haven't unlocked. It's a very special place. And it's a place that you belong in. It's just hard to see when you're in the pits. So I pray this prayer every single day. God, give me faith. Because there's so much unbelief in me. It's just, I don't believe in myself. And I know he's standing there going, I made you. And I know that that's worthwhile, but my brain and my heart at times just don't work together. So every morning I'm praying that prayer and I wake up feeling pretty worthless a lot of times. But man, a little reorientation, and he works some huge miracles. And I know I have a lot bigger purpose than just serving myself and getting through the day. I've got a family, and I want my son to know that the way that I see him, that's what I want him to feel when he grows up. I want him to feel that because he exists, he's enough. I don't care. When you're making mistakes, come to me. I'm okay with that. I did it too. You know, broken people and hurting people hurt people. But I'm also convinced that healing and healed people can heal people. That's the thing that we need to live into. We have an opportunity to heal other people. Jesus Christ said, you will be able to do not only the things that I did, but abundantly more. I'm leaving you with a spirit. Are you kidding me? Parting waters. Right, that's what God does. Can you imagine feeding 5,000 with a couple loaves of bread? Healing super, super sick people who've never walked. Man, that's a tall order, and we can do more than that. That's a lack of faith, because I don't fully believe that. God, give me faith to see that, because if I can believe that, I would love to be able to be shouting from the rooftops, God has done all of this work, and be healed, people, be healed. Trust. Trust looks like praying for his will to be done in our lives, regardless of what may come, because challenges will come. Knowing that he never fails and that he is always wanting what is best for his children. And that does not matter what the circumstances look like. And that's where I just have to trust that his vision for my life is better than what I could possibly see. And so today, I stand in front of you, a work in progress, and I'm thankful to be a work in progress. That's my testimony.
Questions?
Any questions? I'd love to answer any questions you might have. If it's about fishing, yes.
Not fishing.
Yes.
I'm always thinking, beautiful testimony, by the way. Thank you so much for your vulnerability and honesty. Every single one of us in here connects with that. How do you warm up? How do you continue every day? Is there a routine you have every day? Every man in this room knows that we fall short, right? We got to get back on track. We got to create some systems. So how do you create a system that works for you?
Sure, that's a great question. I don't have a perfect system, but I will tell you the first thing for me is I'm a person who showers in the morning. This is where I pray. I start praying because I know from the moment I stick my feet off the edge of my bed, I'm struggling. And a lot of times it's a business thing now. It's just wherever your mind is at. A lot of times your brain will just start, right? Because you woke up and you'll start moving towards whatever needs fixed or whatever you feel like needs done. And so it's prioritizing him at the start of the day. The second thing is surrounding myself with people who have a faith that is stronger than mine. I love men that are older than me. Man, they're so wise. And so I have a different, I'm actually older than I look too, but I have mentors that are, I have one mentor that's 83. I have a mentor that's 56, I think. I have people of all ages, and I have younger mentors too, which is really neat because they continue to refresh my perspective. And I think believing that, you need to believe that God is truly working constantly and that he is alive. Because if you don't, this is a flaw of the first time I got asked to present my testimony my story when I went through what I went through was huge, but he's always working and he's building a testimony. And if I forgot to watch for what he's doing right now in my life, I'm really not going to be able to share of the goodness and the continued goodness that he has. And I look back and I say, okay, I missed all the moments that he was before. I don't want to miss some moments now where he's working. And it gives me an opportunity to share with my kids while we're hurting, right? So giving myself a good community, making sure I prioritize prayer. And then for me, it's a friendship. But it's also a friendship that merits respect, right? It's not just like, yo, God, what's up? Like, I know you got to get some things done for me today. But really, it's pretty informal. I don't close my eyes to pray all the time. A lot of times I'm just wondering, I'm like, God, you help me through this, right? Because he wants to be close with us. And that's what Jesus did, right? He had a group of followers and a group of followers kept growing, but he had a really tight group of people around him that spoke to him closely and that he could encourage and bring wisdom to, but also, he was continuously present with people, and I just think that it's a valuable thing to have a presence of individuals in your life of all different ages and experience. So those two things I would say are probably the most influential. I'm in a small group, which is very, very helpful, helps me be vulnerable all the time. I would say all the time. It gives me the opportunity to be vulnerable, and I just try to constantly give credit where credit's due. It's really easy to be like, well, I did this. Yeah, choices are made where we can take credit for things, and it's not about just constantly dismantling, what you've done, but really recognizing that, there are a lot of key decisions that are hard. And sometimes you need to choose with guidance. And for me, God runs my business. I've been thinking about like, how do I say at the beginning of my testimony, like, hi, my name is Matt Goehler and God owns my business. I think that's probably the best way to say it. But it gives me a starting point. But yeah, just, I guess, prioritizing those things. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. You started out, you talked about trying to please your father and have your important Christ. But I kind of sense that there was an estrangement between you and your dad and you and that core family.
Yeah.
Where are you at with all that?
Yeah, so my mom and dad I appreciate you asking. So my mom and dad are Catholic and they're still going to church. And gosh, I'm not fully convinced that dad has accepted Christ. he's just on that track still, and he's working hard. But he also has a different language of communication. And this is where I was saying, I'm working through this. I pray a lot about my dad. More than anything, his salvation. That's it. I also pray that I would have the courage to have a really deep, heartfelt conversation, but I think that God will guide me in that, and it just hasn't come yet. But I've seen some changes in my dad in the last couple of years, and I'm really excited about that. He hasn't said, "I'm proud of you," which is something I would love to hear before he passes. But he wears shirts that say Lake Effect on them. And I think that might be his way of saying, "I'm proud of you, son." And when they start to fade, he says, "Hey, can you get me some more of those shirts?" And so I don't want to dismiss him, and say like, "Well, I'm who I am because I don't want to be like my dad." There are amazing things that my dad has done in my life. He taught me what it is to work hard. That's a really special thing. And I'll be honest, there's another problem in society today. It's a hard thing to value hard work because we're being taught that that's not right, to work hard and get things. I think just that everybody has some challenges. And so that's getting better. And I'm thankful to be standing here today saying that, because even I remember the time you were saying there was a line to wait to talk to me. I didn't realize how much of my message was actually a message of pain. And it was brokenness and this anger towards my father. And that's changed a lot. And I think it's helping me be more understanding. Yeah, I'm not asking him to change who he is, because who he is actually has some really great intentions. So, anybody else?
I have one.
Yes.
Oh, knowing the backstory a little bit.
Yeah.
I think you started with RBM Jigs, right?
Yeah.
Now it's Lake Effect?
Yeah.
So you started, it was here.
Yeah.
Now it's here.
Yeah.
Tell us that journey quick.
Yeah, so so Lake Effect is, we sell products across the Midwest. Actually, we're selling products in all of the states at this point now, but we're in about 360 stores. But I really started just, painting some jigs in my living room to be able to afford. Actually, everybody, if you ever find something that you like in Lake Effect, probably don't do this, but you could go into Hesperia and thank them for making unaffordable steelhead jigs, because I was like, this is too much. I break off too many times. I can't afford it. So I started painting my own steelhead jigs, and so things started to grow, and I just said, God, if this is of you, continue to build it. If not, kill it right now, because it's too close to my temptation of just fishing constantly. And though I'm not a professional angler, I do get the opportunity. Actually, I was just sharing with you, I'm going to a fly-in in northwest Ontario this summer with 2 professional walleye anglers, and so I get to hang out with professionals, and we travel all across the Midwest. And next year we're going to be going to Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Texas, and Florida. I'm continuing to move the product into spaces as we're growing and changing. And so it was a nice fishing. It was a steelhead jigs. It was a nice fishing thing, and now it's a multi-season venture, and it's just been really awesome because I get to leave healthcare and I love serving people. Don't get me wrong. I did enjoy healthcare, some portions of it, but it wasn't my calling. And 2020 I left healthcare, and God has provided more than we could have ever imagined, and so my goal is to continually give back, and I have a great team. A lot of them weren't Christians, some of them are now, and so it's been awesome to watch that transformation. And even the ones who aren't Christians, the interesting thing is they never say no when I ask them if we can pray at dinner, or if I can pray before our shows on the road. The start of those shows. People are hurting. And I think, we were, one last thing, and I'm sorry, just recently, it was in March actually, we were at a sports show in Madison, Wisconsin, and we sat down and breakfast in the morning, and we're exhausted. And I prayed, and I don't mean to pray loudly necessarily, but I want the guys across from me to hear. And so I was praying for breakfast, and a gentleman walked over as he finished his dinner. He's like, "Gentlemen, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just want to let you know that your prayer just transformed my day, and it's helped me reprioritize things." is the simple stuff that we're not even trying to do. That's the seed that God is planting constantly, and some of those we get to see the fruit of it right now. Some of it we'll never see the fruit, and that's okay too. But it's not about us. It's just about pressing into Him, and so there have been so many opportunities. I could share a million with you just with my team alone, but yeah, it is a worthwhile, challenging thing to follow Jesus.
How many employees now?
So there's 29 of us. It shifts, right? So I don't want to be misleading, but it shifts seasonally. And we're just now constructing a new facility. So I was telling you, it's been a really, really busy season.
Yeah.
But this is where it's hard. You have to keep the priorities, remembering where you came from and remembering how it all began is super, super important, because things can get too busy and out of order very, very quickly. And so I appreciate you taking the time to have me this morning and constantly reaching out to me. Yeah. You're a special person, Cal. Thank you.
You're awesome, dude. You're awesome. Couple quick things. You do not have to go to Hesperia to find his stuff.
Oh, yeah.
Right there.
Yeah.
Armstrong's, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Armstrong's. He's got it in his store right here in White.
Oh, hey, how's it going? I didn't see you wandering.
I didn't see you because when you look this way between the water and those lights that are like, whoa. Okay, I see the light, Lord. I got you. Yeah.
That's funny.
But yeah, they're right here. This is half a mile away. So I've watched him kind of grow. I don't know how long I've known you. 3-4 years. Probably.
Yeah, maybe longer than that. Yeah,
maybe longer than that. So I've kind of watched him grow this business from being small to just a couple of you guys to now 29 and building the warehouse. And I came and seen you at the sports show this year, and I knew if I didn't get there early, like when the doors open, I wasn't gonna get a chance to talk to him, because literally there's a line always ready to talk to this guy about all the wonderful things that he does.
Well, that's because I don't shut up. I mean, like, people can't escape the conversation most of the time. That's the issue.
And I apologize, because I've always called you Goehler, because it looks like Goehler, but it's Goehler.
Yeah, I've been teased about the reality of my last name, so I don't mind Goehler.
Oh, okay. And right, John, my former current broadcast partner, John Russell. Just because a name looks like it's Smith doesn't mean it is. Trust me. Schroeder and Grant is Schrader and Shelby, and it's spelled the same way. So, yeah, Goehler. I'll try to remember, but I'm
no problem at all.
Things. So, grab some coffee and some donuts on the way out. I tried a new blend of coffee. I went and bought expensive coffee this time, not Maxwell House. So, check that out. Let me know if you like it or not. Grab some of the rattle paddles on the way out for you guys that love fishing. And yeah, once again, by the way, I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
And that's something that him and I talk about all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm proud of you. What you did is amazing.
I'm
So how about a nice round of applause? And we will see you July 5. I know, don't whine and got to get up early after the beautiful fireworks, but see you July 5 with Sean Quinlan. It's gonna, just like this, it'll be another powerful testimony. So have a great month. Thanks for coming. God bless. Okay.